Welcome to r/Entitledparents, where OP almost gets murdered by his own mother. Our next Reddit post is from Mr. Steal Yo Girl. I just got out of the hospital for extensive knee surgery, and walking out the door of the hospital reminded me of this story. So here's some important things to note. 1. I have a severe allergy to cashews. It's bad enough that even 1/100th of one cashew will kill me if I'm not treated properly and quickly. Nowadays, I always make sure to have an EpiPen on me at all times. But when this story took place, I was a little more forgetful about my EpiPen, and I didn't always have it. 2. I have asthma, which can be a pretty lousy combination with anaphylaxis. 3. At the time of this story, my dad was working for a company that treated him like garbage and wouldn't give him time off for anything except medical emergencies, pretty much. 4. This story starts 4 days before my 10th birthday. So, a week before my birthday, my dad's boss told him that he was going to San Francisco for work stuff. We lived in Denver at the time, which meant that my dad was going to miss my birthday. I was upset, but I understood that we'd have a party once he got back. While he was gone, me and my brother were staying with my entitled mother. On the 3rd day of my dad's trip, my brother and I were playing in their living room when my entitled mother offered us some granola bars as a snack. At the time, I was young and wasn't very cautious, so I didn't always read ingredients for things that I was eating. Unfortunately, there were cashews in the granola bar, so when I took the first bite, I started to feel it pretty quickly after. Within minutes, I was throwing up everywhere, in severe pain, and my throat was closing up. As if things couldn't get worse, that's when I realized I'd forgotten my EpiPen. Then, between my panic and my closed airways, I had an asthma attack. And I also didn't have my inhaler. So at that point, my entitled mother's boyfriend, who's actually a cool guy, calls an ambulance and I pass out on the floor. The paramedics were able to keep me dying from the anaphylactic shock and the asthma attack, but I did end up slipping into a coma for 11 days. This meant that I was in a coma on my birthday. But I guess that was probably pretty low on the list of concerns, considering they weren't 100% sure that I was going to make it out of the coma. So, a week after my birthday, I finally wake up. At first, I was fairly calm about waking up in a hospital, until I found out that I'd been in a coma for 11 days. At that point, I started panicking, and almost gave myself another asthma attack. Anyways, they kept me there for a few days just to make sure I was okay and that it was safe for me to go home. So we finally get home, and as soon as I walk in, I see my brother, my grandparents, my aunt, my uncle, my 2 cousins, my entitled mom, and my neighbor and her kids with a big sign that reads, "Happy birthday and welcome back to the land of the living." They had planned a surprise birthday party for me once they found out that I was out of the coma. So we started doing birthday party things and hanging out while the neighbor bakes my cake. Then I hear this conversation between my entitled mom and the neighbor mom. The neighbor says, "Man, that must have been terrifying for OP to go into a coma. I mean, imagine having to be that careful about everything you eat." My entitled mom said, "Oh, don't tell me you buy all of that." "What?" "He was clearly faking it to get attention. Everyone knows that asthma and allergies aren't real." Both of those are very real and very serious problems. "Whatever, you sheeple are just too stupid to see through the government's lies." Then my entitled mother just wandered off. I feel it's important to note that at this time, the birthday cake had just been put in the oven, and this conversation happened in the living room, which didn't have a line of sight to the kitchen. After a while, the cake was finally finished baking, and we all congregated in the dining room to eat it. So everyone sang happy birthday to me, and my aunt cut the cake and gave everyone a slice. I was about to take the first bite when the luckiest thing that could have happened. I dropped my fork on the floor. I, wanting to act all grown up and solve my own problems, decided I'd go into the kitchen to clean the fork myself. Right as I finish and I start walking back out to the dining room, I hear my dad yell, "What the f*** did you just say?" I run out to see what's going on, and I see my dad standing up, staring daggers at my entitled mother while she cowered in fear of him. My entitled mother whimpered, "It was for his own good." It turned out that after my entitled mother had that conversation with the neighbor, my entitled mother had snuck into the kitchen and poured most of the bag of mixed nuts that she had brought with her into the cake. My dad slammed his hand on the table and yelled, "How the f*** is that for his own good?" My entitled mom started to gain some confidence and said, "Well, if he had eaten the cake without knowing they were there, he wouldn't have been able to fake a reaction because he wouldn't have known that there was anything in the cake to react to." What the actual is wrong with you? I was trying to prove to you sheeple that Allergy... I knew inviting you here was a mistake. I figured that it was good for the boys to have you in their lives, but you've made it abundantly clear that it's not. So what are you saying? I'm saying get the F out of my house and stay the F away from my kids. You can't do that. They're my kids too. Not after what you pulled, they're not. And if you want to take this to court, I'll make sure that you're not even allowed in the same state as them. Now, get the F out of my house before I call the cops. You just wait until my father hears about this. Her dad is very wealthy, so I think she was expecting him to help her get custody of my brother and me. We found out later that not only did her boyfriend break up with her and kick her out of his house, but when her dad found out about what she did, he refused to let her live with him. He stopped giving her money and said that if she took my dad to court, he would support my dad. As you can expect, she never took us to court. And as for the rest of the party, we just bought a new cake because nobody wanted to take the time to bake another one. We also decided to just throw out the pan because she had put so many nuts into it that we were worried about contaminating anything that we put in after that. So after reading the story, this is kind of an odd place for my brain to go to, but I can't help thinking about the neighbor, and I'm just putting myself in her shoes. You know, from her perspective, she probably thinks she's doing a nice thing, like, oh, the neighbors almost lost their kid to anaphylactic shock. That must have been really scary. So I want to be a nice neighbor, a caring mom, and I'll tell you what, I'll bake the birthday cake. That way you guys don't have to worry about it. Just let me take care of it because I just want to be a good neighbor. Then, unbeknownst to this neighbor woman, the cake that she made almost became a murder weapon. I'm trying to picture the amount of guilt that I would feel if I were in that woman's shoes about how I would accidentally contribute to a 10-year-old kid's death. That just, there's a lot of bad stuff in this story. Obviously, the entitled mother is just awful through and through. But man, that's just another layer, is that she almost ruined this woman's life by making her an accessory to murder accidentally. Our next Reddit post is from Cube Dice is Nice. Recently, I held a birthday party for my 3-year-old. It was a kid-themed venue, but not the kind of place that has staff or set up for kids to be dropped off. I invited many of the kids from our little one's daycare, so it was the first time meeting most of the parents. The following exchange happened, and it still bewilders me when I think about it. In walks a pair of entitled parents alongside others. They say, "Where can we put this bag in case you need anything?" Confused, I say, "Feel free to keep it at any table you choose to sit at." "Oh, we're just dropping off our little one. We'll be back to pick him up after the party is done in about 2 hours. I explained that I can't support watching their child and hosting the party, and no one will be responsible for their kids, so they need to stay. "He's super simple to watch, and you won't have a problem at all. Just call us if there's trouble." By the way, their kid is also 3. That will not be happening. Once again, we're busy hosting and watching our own kid. You need to stay with your child. "Well, I guess he and the gift that we brought will not be able to stay because we have shopping to do." Okay, thanks for stopping by. They blankly stared at me, shocked that their threat didn't work. Of course, their kid had a tantrum having to leave so fast, so they stayed for the first half of the party. They still walked out with their gift though. Oh darn, one less random Amazon Kids toy. Who in their right mind thinks that it's okay to drop off a 3-year-old with people that they've never met before? Other than a daycare, of course. Okay, I'm gonna admit something super lame. Super lame. But I recently went to a 3-year-old birthday party with my 3-year-old daughter, and it was the highlight of my weekend. What can I say? I'm a lame dad who likes to just hang out with my daughter and do family time. But they had pinned the tail on the donkey, and they had cupcakes and lots of balloons, and it was like a fun party. I don't understand why parents don't want to come to birthday parties with their kids given the opportunity. Our next Reddit post is from Money Photograph. This next post is an update to a previous post from the same user. In the original post, OP was explaining how her stepbrother sexually assaulted her when she was 11 to 16, and her entitled mom protected her stepbrother. My entitled mom wants me to marry my abusive stepbrother. So I'm a 29-year-old woman, and my mother has always preferred my stepbrother Chris, who's 42, over me. He was my abuser growing up, and he sexually assaulted me from the time that I was 11 to 16. I was recently tracked down by my mother, and she, along with my stepbrother, have been harassing me since. Currently, I'm in a legal fight with them to recover some stolen inheritance from my father and trying to get a restraining order, among other matters. This weekend, once again, my mother decided to accost me at work. I was working from home doing clerical work for the clinic that I work at. I'm a nurse practitioner, but I took some clerical duties to be able to work from home when the mess with my mother and Chris began. Since then, I've had to go back to work, so I'm back in the clinic taking patients. For the most part, Saturday went well and was quiet. On Sunday, however, I noticed someone in the forums that had my mother's name, but not her last name. My mom has a very unique name. It's very old, and I've only seen it twice in my whole life. Lo and behold, it was my mother using a fake last name. When I saw her at my work, I immediately called my boss. My boss is aware of the situation and immediately went to ask my mother to please leave the premises. You might see this as controversial, so to explain it before the debate starts, my mom was in for a general checkup, not a life or death treatment. She wasn't denied for pointless reasons, but because I, a member of the staff, felt like my life was in danger in her presence. There's a lot of other clinics she could go to, and this is allowed in our state's law. If she was hyperventilating or clearly in distress, we would not be able to ask her to leave. My mother, of course, went on a rampage, demanding to be seen by me specifically. My boss, thankfully, was not intimidated and just insisted that my mother had to leave or else the cops would be called. I watched the back and forth on the security cameras, and after the confrontation, my mother threw a letter at my boss and left fuming. My mom even pushed another lady who was walking in, though thankfully no one was hurt. My boss brought me the letter and told me that she would make sure to not assign me any patients with my mother's first name, and went to make arrangements with our front desk. I took a break and decided to read the letter, mostly to see if it was something I could use for my restraining order. Here's the letter. My lovely daughter, it hurts me so much you refuse to speak to me. I love you so much, and all I want is to recover the years that we've lost. I only have you left from your father, whom I loved dearly. I know there's a lot of misunderstandings with Chris. He loves you so much, and I wish you would give him a chance to prove it to you. He's always talked about how beautiful you are, and how much he wished you two could spend more time together. He truly adores you, and I wish you would consider his feelings more. He even asked me to convince you to marry him, and I think that's a wonderful idea. Papa, my stepfather, and I are probably divorcing, so this will be the perfect solution so Chris, you and I can stay a family. He keeps going on and on about how much he wants to raise your and his baby together. Let me know when you want to go shopping for wedding dresses. I love you, my darling. Mom. I'm going to share a few personal notes here. I am unable to get pregnant. After Chris's attack, I had some medical complications that have left me unable to conceive. My mother knows about this condition. Chris knows about this condition. The cops know about it. The authorities ruled the whole thing consensual, and because I was 16, the legal age of consent, nothing was done. I showed this to my lawyer, and he added it to the compilation of things we're using for the restraining order. There's still no court date, and the cops don't consider my case risky enough to do the paperwork for a temporary restraining order. I do have one officer who's taking this very seriously, and he's been amazing. It's just the majority of cops don't seem to care, or they have too much on their docket to deal with anyways. Okay, I'm not exactly sure how an 11-year-old girl is supposed to be able to give consent to a, 25-year-old guy, so this is, pretty disturbing. Also, OP, since your mom is so clearly pro-incest, it seems like the obvious solution is for her to marry her stepson instead of you to marry your stepbrother. Because clearly, this woman has an unhealthy obsession with her stepson. Our next Reddit post is from Candid Consequence. I'm a plumber, and my job brings me to the inside of a lot of homes. Anyways, one time, I go to this entitled mom's house to fix her sink. Her husband had left her recently, and she didn't know how to fix the problem. So I arrive at the home and I was greeted by Entitled Kid, who yells to his mother and she lets me in and leads me to the sink that wasn't working. I started working on the sink. The Entitled Kid approaches me as I'm working and starts kicking me. He's not hurting me, but it got agitating after a little bit, so I tell the Entitled Kid to stop. And he proceeds to start hitting me in the face. So I go to get his mom and this conversation unfolds. Could you possibly tell your son to please stop hitting me while I'm working? It makes it hard to focus. What do you mean? Is he hurting you? No, not really. I'm just trying to focus and it's annoying. So if he's not hurting you, what does it matter? Well, I'm trying to focus and it's quite aggravating. Entitled Kid, is this true? Yes. Well, OP, it's my house, so our rules. Are you serious? Yes, I am. My son is allowed to hit you because you're on the premises of my home. She crossed her arms. At that point, I just packed up my tools and walked towards the door to leave. What are you doing? I paid good money for your services. I said, I'll make sure we get you a refund, and I drove off. Well, think I have a sense for why the husband left her. Also, down in the comments, we have this story from Manchester Lady. My partner also works in the trades, and this is an entitled parent story that he shared with me. His name is the same name as a cartoon character. So the entitled mom introduced my partner to her kids under that name. The kids then peppered him with questions for hours as if he was the actual character. The mom was nowhere to be found because she took off shopping for several hours. She figured that since he was there, he could watch her kids while she shopped. Yo, you guys, as the dad of a 3-year-old girl, the idea of leaving my child with any stranger at all gives me actual physical anxiety. I can feel tightness in my chest. It makes me incredibly uncomfortable. I honestly can't imagine leaving your kids with a complete and total strangers for hours in a locked house. Man, these stories remind me of that phrase, all children deserve parents, but not all parents deserve children. That was rSlash Parents, and if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit videos every single day.